This is Dean Jameson Watts. He has taught in this program. He has been here for since the data science program started. And yeah.
All right, well, we'll fix it all in post-production, I'm sure, with, the editing team. Yeah, well, welcome all, and thank you for the introduction, Reese. Like Reese said, yeah, I've been attached to this program from the very beginning and taught most of the folks that you're going to hear from tonight. Although one of our very recent alums, Miley, I think escaped without ever having to suffer one of my lectures in the program. And she'll get a chance to talk about that as well. All right, so what I'd like is for each of you to briefly introduce yourself and talk about a little bit, what your current role is and where it is as well. And I'll go in the order that I see you all on the screen, if that's all right. And so, Justice, you're first on my right.
Great. Thanks, Jameson. Hi, everyone. My name is Justice Eaglesmith. Graduated in 23 in August. And my current role is I'm an AI engineer with Oregon Health Authority. And so what that looks like is within that role, some of my tasks is basically designing, building, engineering AI applications, primarily with large language models right now, and then using statistical analysis to assess the outputs to make sure things are being deployed safely and it's being used in the correct manner. So pleasure to meet everyone. Jameson, thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. Hans, you're next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Hans Lendorf. I'm a consultant at Evergreen Economics. I've been there for a few years now, but graduated from the data science program in 22, although I keep getting confused. Yeah, I think 22 sounds right. 23? 23. Anyway, 23. Thank you. Like I said, started in 22, graduated in 23. Yeah, so work at Evergreen as a consultant with a few other alumnus from the program, and it's a lot of some analytical work as well as some project management things, primarily working with electric utilities across the Northwest and across the country.
Thanks, Hans. Miley.
Hi, my name is Miley Sakamoto. I currently work as an informaticist at Humana, and I'm on our clinical programs and modeling team there. So I do a lot of study design, study execution, study analysis, and I also do a fair amount of work with our business partners and teams within Humana to look into different ways we can optimize member access to medication and business outcomes.
Very cool. Thank you. Rochelle.
Kind of a long list. I'll try to keep it short. I do a lot of different things. Like Reese was saying, I come back all the time. You guys can't get rid of me. Sorry. But I currently am a data analyst at the Oregon Department of Revenue. I specifically work in human resources, so that it looks like people and workforce analytics. I've been working on a dashboard for them with live updating information because before it was just like a PDF Word document with like graphs and things on it. So I'm actually building them a dashboard in Power BI. I've been working on a full ETL process for that whole thing because the data is a mess. But aside from that, I also am the communications coordinator for the State of Oregon Research Academy, which is a group of individuals that work across the state of Oregon to try to produce data events for like-minded data people all across the state. So we host quarterly webinars. We actually just featured Justice on our AI panel recently. And then I'm also a part of a small work group right now that is working towards creating data-specific job classifications for the state of Oregon enterprise. Because right now it's also kind of a mess. There's all kinds of different types of titles that data is hidden in. There's no real clear like data analyst or data scientist Justice is like one of the rare exceptions that it actually sounds like a data title. So I'm actually working with the CDO, Mike Woodford at ODOT, and several other professionals across the state to actually create a track of data job classifications. So that is what I do.
Thank you. So I don't know if any of you remember this, but at the very beginning, when I'm introducing students to, kind of what we do, I tell them that there's a myth out there that, you're actually going to spend most of your time doing, kind of AI or modeling. When in fact, what you're going to spend most of your time doing is dealing with messy data and people. So Rochelle, has that been true in your position?
Absolutely. So, and I have to clarify, it is different with each agency. So with the state of Oregon, like Justice going into Oregon Health Authority, that's going to be a much more robust, larger setup. They have a lot more data infrastructure and teams there. I come from Revenue, which is a much smaller agency, which is kind of strange because we actually collect the money for all the other agencies to run, but we just happen to be one of the smaller agencies. So we don't even have like a data warehouse for the information that I'm gathering. So I gather all of the information from Workday. And so I have to manually download Excel reports from Workday and create my own kind of database system to be able to clean and wrangle and produce all of the data that they want for these people and workforce metrics. And yeah, absolutely. The talking to people as well. So, first of all, having to clean that, but then having to deal with the people who are actually making the reports, that a lot of them are HR professionals. They're not data professionals. And so they don't understand as much how to more easily structure things, to join things together and make them more efficient. And so I'm constantly having to go to Department of Administrative Services, which is, if you think of the state of Oregon as like an enterprise, each agency is kind of its own individual organization, but DAS is what oversees the entire state as an enterprise, including all the organizations. So they're the ones that do Workday because it is an enterprise-wide software system. And so I have to basically put in a case and request different tweaks or edits to these reports that I'm downloading all the time, because either there's missing information or they changed a report and they removed a column and then that messed up all of my stuff. So constantly dealing with and communicating with professionals to make sure they understand what our needs are and what our agency's needs are. And then also on the other end, working with my agency to make sure that I am understanding the needs that they are asking for and what they actually want and producing that. So that is 90% of my job.
Yeah, so a huge amount of this, right, is just understanding how to kind of take what humans think about and actually, turn that into something that machines can think about. So, Miley, how does this work at your organization? And do you find yourself dealing with messy data on a regular basis?
Yeah, I also did my internship in a health insurance company at Pacific Source, and nothing could have prepared me for messy health insurance data. It is quite literally a nightmare when I first get in there. But I think in my role now, I do a lot of collaboration with business partners and I work with a lot of different departments within Humana. A lot of my job is actually like study design and seeing what kind of like realistically we can provide on the data side of things to like support different business ventures. So I would say, yeah, I deal with a lot of messy data. I think that healthcare data, it's just kind of insane to look at sometimes. Definitely took a bit of adjusting, but I think that it's a lot of communication with different departments. And a lot of my job is like honing my communication skills and my analysis skills at the same time. I would say it's about a 50-50 balance. So, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So Hans, I know that you've moved into a little bit of project management, so clearly there's, a bit of, kind of client interface there. What are some of, the skills that you learn in the MS program that you're still using, even as you transition to more of that leadership role?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's not just can I run a model, and I totally agree. So much you get a lot of value out of a model, but a lot of it comes from the data. But also a lot of it, maybe a lot more of it, comes from how well you're able to communicate the findings, the results. How do I make this significant for a client? How do I turn something that I understand as either the code or the data? I think the method's really cool, but make it actionable for them. A lot of the work that I do is around energy efficiency and evaluating energy efficiency programs, and really it all comes back to people's experience, their story, and communicating that in data form, whether that's energy usage, whether that's survey analysis, the sort of models that you can build. Ultimately, it all comes back to what can we tell the client, and what can we tell the client, for my purposes, about their customers and about the people that they're trying to serve through energy efficiency programs.
Nice. So, Justice, when you were in the program, large language models were just kind of starting to emerge as, the thing. And in our redesign recently, I shouldn't say redesign, but in our refresh of the graduate program, we're getting a lot deeper into some of that work. But you've kind of had to learn this on your own, using a lot of, the fundamentals that you got in our program. How have you transitioned into this role? What did you take from the program that you're still using? What have you had to learn in this new role?
Yeah, great question. It's really interesting. I'm glad that I took a statistical approach to learning machine learning and AI because it makes everything easier. Now, I will say, like, when you move into an AI, so there's like kind of AI systems engineering, and then there's AI engineering, and they sound the same, but AI systems engineering is more of software development, and that's a little bit more what I do, with using existing frameworks to, like OpenAI and LangChain, all these different frameworks to build AI systems. And then there's AI engineering where maybe you're pulling raw, like maybe picture data and making computer vision models from scratch. Um, and that's like a lot of the stuff that I learned from the machine learning class when I had with Dr. Oram. And that really stuck with me, and I love that. But it gives you the foundation. So like Dr. Gore's class in statistics and intro to R, all of that builds the foundation to be able to understand like what is top P, top K sampling, nucleus sampling, all these like weird words that you look at and it's like, oh, it's just choosing the next token from a set of distributions. And you wouldn't know that if you didn't take a statistics class. And so it was vital to me being able to move into this role.
Well, so let me stick with you for a moment then. Since you mentioned a couple of these classes, what do you remember most clearly about the program, and what was your favorite class or classes when you were in it, or even on
Yeah,
reflection?
right. I think my favorite class was certainly the machine learning class, the machine learning foundations. I took that with Dr. Hendrik Oram, and that was just incredible. What I love about that class is it's the first step into understanding like how AI works because you're understanding the predictive properties of statistics, and then that's the foundation of building into, the the exponential value you get from adding software to statistics. So like having statistics is one thing, but when you can add big data, machine readable data, and the scale of that into statistics, you get something beautiful. And that's kind of where we're at today. And so Dr. Oram's class, but also Dr. Gore's class, I believe it was like an intro to R class, but she goes pretty deep into statistics. I'm sure the professors change for the class, but that class specifically was also great just because I'm just the annoying one that asks a bunch of deeper questions about statistics and stuff. So that, I would encourage students to ask questions about statistics if you don't understand or you want to learn more, because that's where the real learning happens.
So I taught the intro to data science with our course the first few times it was offered, and when I handed it off to Kristen, Dr. Gore, she came to me and she said, I'm not going to let these kids get out of here without a heavy dose of statistics. And I was like, all right, have at it. That's your PhD, not mine. And I'm glad she did because that class has really evolved into something really beautiful. So it's good to hear that feedback. Rochelle, I could probably guess your answer, but what was your favorite class when you went through the program?
I want to know what your guess is first.
My guess is data visualization with
You would
Dr.
think that.
Smalley. It
Yeah,
wasn't
you would think
though?
that, right? I mean, okay. I don't want to say I have a lot of favorites, okay? So I'm gonna try to keep it to the things that I'm classifying it as my favorite because I felt like I learned the most. So data visualization was great, don't get me wrong. I loved that class. I think some of the classes that were, well, okay, maybe that was one of my favorites, but I would rephrase it and say some of the more impactful classes that I had rather than favorite was a lot of the electives that I took. So obviously, we're all going to learn a lot of stuff in the core classes, the fundamentals, all of those things. But coming from like kind of a weird background, so I owned a restaurant for like 10 years. So I'm like a really weird career change, like complete left turn to something totally different. Taking classes like the market research class with Deborah Ringgold, which also goes into a lot of statistics. It was like a technical class, and it really, really got you thinking a lot more about the statistics and making sure things are, scientifically proven, and the whole correlation causation thing and doing all the different tests, right? Like that was a really impactful class for me. The other one that was a really interesting class, which is kind of how my brain works, is oh shoot, what was it called? It was the one with Kavika Pearson, or oh,
Oh yeah, it was
system
like
dynamics.
system
Yeah.
dynamics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
system dynamics. That was a really, really cool class too, because it is sort of part visualization, but it's also part like, how are you thinking about the data? Because you have a lot of different types of people where some people, the whole forest analogy, like some people really get into the forest and they're looking like too close in, but then there's other people that jump right over the forest and skip the whole thing and they're looking for the next thing. But this class is more like, okay, well, let's see what the impact is, and then let's figure out how to work from there. And it's a way to visualize that mindset of thinking of and especially with the lens of AI nowadays, like what is the impact of all of these things? Like, what are we putting into these models? How is it going to impact every other thing as a ripple effect that's connected to it? So that was a really cool class to take too.
Thank you. Hans, what was your favorite class going through the program? And then I'm going to skip to you, Miley, because you're the most recent grad, and so I'm trying to like see if there's any sort of trend or changes here. Go ahead, Hans.
Yeah, there's a few classes. Machine learning, really enjoyed. That was, one of my sort of main motivations for even considering the program, is I really wanted to learn about that. Communicating with data was a great class, and visualizing data was a great class. But I do think that the capstone class at the end is a really impactful opportunity to have, to be able to really take a life cycle data science project, and deal with the real world implications of, you don't have unlimited amounts of time, you don't have unlimited data, the data isn't necessarily clean, and you have to deliver something in the end that's actually engaging for an audience, and not an audience of only data science classmates, but other people too, who are not going to know necessarily what you're talking about. And really enjoyed the opportunity to do that. And that's really been one of the most applicable things for me in the real world doing work, is trying to consider the timeline, budget implications, communication requirements that it takes to be able to deliver a real, true, real world data science project.
I remember sitting with you late at night going through some of your project findings and refining that model. So that's a fun reflection. Miley, what was your favorite?
I think I'm also going to have to go with Dr. Gore's Foundations of Data Science in R. For me, that was the class where I had the steepest learning curve, because coming into the program, I had little to no experience with data analysis or R or really any programming language. But I think that her emphasis on statistics and like a full understanding of what you're doing when you're going through the steps of a data analysis was really helpful in kind of laying a foundation for the rest of the program. And then I also think the capstone course for me was really great. I liked the freedom of choosing a project and kind of executing from start to finish. I think that was really valuable experience, like Hans was saying. And because my capstone was also in the healthcare realm, it ended up being super applicable to the process that I go through at work as well. So yeah, those were my two favorites.
Well, let me stick with you, Miley. What advice would you give to folks that are considering joining the program?
Yeah, I think that being open-minded and open to learning was something that really helped me through the program. I think you learn a lot of information in a very condensed period of time. I like when I finished the program, I graduated in August. I looked at where I started the August prior, and it was kind of crazy to me to like see how much I had learned in that period of time. And coming out of it, I was applying for jobs that I like couldn't even have imagined being qualified for the year before. So I think just like trusting yourself and trusting the process. I think you look at it as 12 months where you're going to go through like I was a medical assistant when I came into the program, and then 12 months later I was a data science intern, and like 14 months after that, after I had started the program, I landed like a job at a large healthcare insurance company. And like I think just committing to the program, committing to learning, and being open to where the program takes you, was really important to me.
Thank you. Rochelle, what advice would you give students?
Um, I think what Miley said was really excellent advice, being open for sure. One of the things that I always say at the beginning of my presentations to remind people to kind of like check their ego when they're looking into all of these insights is a quote that Deborah Ringgold actually said in that marketing and or the market research class. She said, you always want to shake hands with your data. So, a lot of people make assumptions and they want to go into things and they think they already kind of know what's going to happen, and they're just trying to prove their own biasy. But I think that it's really important to shake hands with the data, get to know it, as if it's a stranger and you've never met it before, and then really go in with an open mind. My second piece of advice is network. I think it's really good to stay connected with the alumni that are through the program. I think there's a lot of really great people that are willing to help and, make connections or help you with resume stuff or give job advice, all of those types of things. I think that remaining connected is really good, and not being afraid to like reach out if you have questions or need help. Um, and yeah, and just be patient. Like Miley's story's great. She was able to do things really quickly. Mine's a little different. But again, like I said, I was a little bit more of a strange example of someone who goes through this program as a career change. So it took me a little bit longer. So I had to have a lot of patience and determination to really like finally land that first job within the field. So everyone's different, and don't beat yourself up, and just keep going even if it feels like it's hard. So that's my advice.
Justice, Hans, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would say do projects. So a lot of my learning came when I had to look at data in the eye and kind of build the project myself. It's really good to build the foundation to kind of have the training wheels in the classroom with homework and things of that nature to guide you and how to think through things. And it's a good reference to have. So don't get rid of your homework. Keep your homework because that's what you're going to refer back to for answers to information. But um, Jameson does a really good job of bringing in speakers from industry. And he brought in someone in particular. So this kind of touches on networking as well, but So Young Park. And I reached out to her just to kind of talk through like, hey, I'd like to learn a little bit more. Here's a project I did, assess it. And she just tore it to shreds. I think she's a PhD in electrical engineering. And she
Yeah.
was telling me, she was like, do you know like why you chose to use this metric? And it was in particular, I believe it was recall. I was like, well, that's kind of what I read I should do. She's like, okay. And she walked me through the difference between precision, recall, and F1 score. And that stuck with me, and I'll never forget that. And that was just the power of building a project myself, understanding every step about it and the decision, like why I chose the certain metrics I chose and things of that nature. So if I could ask like everybody to do that, I would like encourage that for sure.
Nice. That's good advice, Hans.
Yeah, I think just along the lines of that, there's a lot of content that comes out of the program that's directly applicable. Having the opportunity to develop, hey, I know this works, I can do this, and I can go use this in the real world is super useful. I think to prepare for that in part is if you have the availability before starting an undertaking like this program, getting familiar with either statistical concepts, getting an introduction to R if you don't have familiarity with that can really help make things easier. But I think probably more than anything else is a lot like, you know, take data, and it's really the model that's going to have a lot to do with that. You get out of your data what you put into it in terms of effort and time and thoughtfulness. Same thing with the program. You can get through the program. You can take all the classes, but it's really going to be getting out what you want to get out, putting in the effort to either make those connections, connect with professors, build up skill sets, taking interesting and challenging opportunities as they come up. Really get out what you want of from the program, and highly recommend doing that.
Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate that. Reese, are there any additional questions that you'd like us to address?
I think you all did a good job of touching on everything. One thing that I'm kind of just curious about, what was like the biggest learning curve for people transitioning out of the program into like real job like duties, right? Like what was the one thing that was like, whether it be a technical hurdle or whether it be like something that just kind of caught you out of left field, right? Something like that is, I don't know, there's probably a more elegant way that Jameson could word that, right? But I think that made sense. So I don't know if anyone has a comment or something that was unexpected, but
I can start. When I first started my job, I came out of the program focusing, or I guess in the program we focused on our Python and SQL. And my job right now primarily uses SAS. So the adjustment there was basically like learning the syntax of a whole new programming language, but I did find it very useful to know what I did about other languages, and it was kind of like learning a new like speaking language. Once you know one, it's way easier to learn another one. So I think that the program and like the languages that you learn, regardless of if they're the ones that you use directly in your job, are helpful because the transition wasn't actually that bad. But it was funny that I had like three core languages down, and then the one that I end up using now is one that we didn't really work on in the program. But yeah.
I can't believe SAS still lives out there.
It is so outdated. We're transitioning, but for the next, I think up until through 2025, it's going to be the primary one that we use, but we're transitioning back into Python soon. So I'm looking forward to it.
Good.
So I'll just reiterate the messy data thing. Like, the data infrastructures or lack thereof, and just the messiness of the data and having to clean it. But not only that, there's one thing that I didn't actually mention that I think is really important to mention. Sometimes the data is actually wrong too. Like I was given a key for these, coded department numbers, and the list that I was given was completely wrong. So it was giving me different results than what had been showing before. And so I guess that's another good example of like, just because it's what your data is showing doesn't mean that it's right. And sometimes you really have to dig deeper to find out, to make sure that you even have the right information to begin with. So, and all of that also comes down to communication. So I think the communicating with the team members, especially the ones that are non-technical, has been even more challenging than I thought it would be. And I consider myself a pretty good communicator, and it's been a little bit hard. So just making sure, that you're being exhaustive and asking the right questions and making sure you have the right resources. And sometimes you actually have to start from complete scratch to make sure you're building up all of the right information to get the right metrics. Because a lot of these people have been doing it from scratch in Excel, like at the state, up until now. So just making sure when you're building all these models and doing all of these things that you actually have the right information. So I think that was a shock to me.
Fair. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think I just add to that yeah, totally agree. So in terms of the communication component, there's a lot of people out there in the world. Somebody asked me, what do you do? I work with data, and they said, what's that? I was like, oh, numbers, computer coding. Like, is that like an accountant? Really didn't understand what the concept was. So there's all kinds of levels. That was a good reminder of just like, okay, if I say I did a model, people are going to think like an airplane or something with glue and paint. So not everybody is on the same page. People that I work with, same thing. And you got to be able to communicate the concepts and why they matter at some level, in a basic sort of way. So I think the program prepares us well for an understanding, not of just here's the code to write, but of why we're doing that, what we're trying to accomplish, and how that all contributes to being successful in a data science project in the real world.
Thanks.
I had one other quick question too. I just thought of if everyone's wrapped up on that one. So in this panel, we have quite the range of people coming into the program from different points of their life. We have Justice, who stayed at Willamette for his undergrad, and then he did Willamette's MBA, and then he did our data science program. We have Miley, who joined us from a different institution, but as a recent graduate. We have Hans, who joined us. I believe you were a Willamette undergrad, but came back later to do this program. And Rochelle, who was a career change in a kind of a different profile, right? So what were your kind of motivating factors, and what kind of led you to want to enter this kind of degree program in this industry in general?
I guess I can start with that one because I'm the oddball out. Actually, I should have mentioned this earlier with my favorite classes. So one of my actual favorite classes, and I'm not trying to just like brown nose here, but I took Jameson's marketing analytics class in the MBA program. And it's so funny because I had just started the MBA in 2020, and it was the very first year of the data science master's program. It was their very first year. And so they mashed our cohorts together for orientation. And I remembered hearing the term data science, and I was like, oh my God, that sounds so terrible and boring. I just thought it sounded like terrible. But then I took Jameson's marketing analytics class, which was probably your last MBA class that you taught, I'm guessing.
It might have been, yeah.
I think it was. And that's when I learned. So previous to that, I was really more of like the visual side of marketing. I'm really into like Jameson said, visualization was probably my favorite class. I did a lot of like branding design and logo and artwork and all of that kind of stuff. And so I was going into a marketing class thinking that, but what was really cool is we didn't do any of that. It was really all about like, what is the data telling us about how to market to different people? And I realized, oh my gosh, that's the nerdy stuff that I do in my free time. Like when I actually have the opportunity to do it at my restaurant, I would pull all the raw data from Square and make my own models and made my own dashboard from scratch, just like naturally on my own. And I was like, oh, that's what data science is. That's data analytics, and I can make a whole career out of just that thing. So that's kind of what led me to it. I went in thinking that I was going to get my MBA and end up in HR, which is funny because I'm in HR, which was not on purpose. It just happened to be that way. But I also am doing data science, which is the part of it that I love the most. So I have Jameson to thank for that. You're the one that showed me what it is and made me realize that that's like what I was meant to do. So anyway, that's my story.
Yeah, going off, kind of piggybacking on the MBA to a data science career. I know Robert Walker had in the MBA program I think it was modeling and decision making for managers was the title. And when I took that, everyone did horrible. I don't think there was anybody that was like good at it, especially for MBAs doing heavy R. It was like a pretty R intensive class and then heavy statistics. So you're learning R and statistics at the same time, your first time. So that was a lot. But I had like a weird um love for that pain of just like the reward of struggling and then being able to come up with a business answer through statistics. And it kind of I realized later on I just love statistics and I didn't realize it yet. And then it was so easy for me to say, oh, there's a master's in just this stuff. Yeah, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to do data science work. So it was a pretty easy like feeling to move into that. It wasn't logical. It was just a feeling.
Miley or Hans, did you have any kind of journey or let's see, foundation story?
Um, I did not get an MBA, but I did get a lot of exposure to data science. I feel like it was really booming at the time that I graduated from University of Oregon. I think actually my class at University of Oregon was the first year that they had a graduating class for their undergraduate data science program. So it was something that I kind of was starting to learn more about and was more interesting to me. And I had some like light exposure to the concepts. I did human physiology at University of Oregon, so doing a lot of like research papers, experimentation, like I had a lot of exposure to the principles of data science and statistics and everything like that. Um, but I thought I was going to stick in healthcare as more of like a patient-facing person. And so I started working as a medical assistant. I was doing that for about 2 years before I got into the program and everything. And when I was going through the medical assistant gig, I just realized that maybe that wasn't the way that I wanted to contribute to healthcare, but I still wanted to see what I could do in that industry. And data science popped back up. I guess it had always kind of been in the back of my mind. But it was something that I was getting increasingly more interested in. And Willamette ended up having the program in my hometown and from Portland. And the more I learned about it, the more exciting it was. So it just ended up kind of falling into place really nicely.
Yeah, I think for me, Reese mentioned that I undergrad at Willamette and then started working had my degree in economics, started working at Evergreen after that, and it
Hans, you're muted, I believe.
Thank you. Yes. Was I talking that whole time? Okay. Anyway.
No, we heard the first part of it. Yeah.
Oh, then I got muted. Okay. All right. Cool. Yes. So I didn't have a lot of applied skills when I started my job at Evergreen. So I had to learn it on the job, which was learning R, but it was really hard and I really didn't like it at all. I didn't see the point, and I thought Excel was great. What more could you need than a good spreadsheet? And that quick changed over time. Took a little while to see the value in R, and really enjoyed working in R, and still do. But the main thing that I was really missing, and I could see that there was not a lot of industry use, was machine learning in particular. And I knew that if I really wanted to understand what was going on and have a good sense of what's going on in the world right now with machine learning, AI, deep learning, everything that's I think going to be kind of transformational societally, I was going to need to have a more in-depth education than I was going to get on the job, and that's really what led me to the program. Is was excited to continue learning in R, was excited to learn about other ways of applying knowledge and skills, learning new skills, data visualization, being part of that, and also really excited to learn machine learning and bring that back to my industry and to my workplace to be able to try to use those tools effectively and contribute in that way.
Well, very cool. I suppose at this point we could see if there are any questions from members of the audience. Anyone out there have something they want to ask the panelists?
I have a question, if that's all right.
Yeah, please, Sierra.
Okay, so I'm really curious about specific tools that you use in your careers in relation to analyzing data. Rochelle, I heard you talk about Power BI, so that's kind of the realm that I'm thinking about and curious about.
Yeah, so at our department specifically, we can only use R. We're not allowed to use Python because they have like security concerns. We have a lot of like really restricted data where we're at, which is also why I think they haven't built out a lot of like the cloud databases that we really could have access to. Because I think we could be using Microsoft Azure and Snowflake like some other agencies, but we are able to use R and Power BI basically is what I'm able to use. I know they're talking about opening it up to be able to start doing some of the cloud infrastructure too. So I'm really kind of pressing towards that, also having conversations with directors and stuff. But those are the tools that I use the most. I still, unfortunately, I mean, I think anywhere you go, you're going to have to use Excel in some situations, especially when you're communicating the data to certain people. That, like, for instance, actually, this was one thing I could have mentioned earlier about the communicating. My direct boss likes to have Excel spreadsheets. Like, she doesn't really like me to give her summary reports of things if I'm doing little side projects. Like, she wants the Excel file so that she can actually sort the data herself. But for the broader stuff for the agency, visualizing in Power BI.
All right. Well, Sierra, sorry, did that answer your question? Did you want to hear from other panelists?
Yeah, it did answer my question, but I would also love to hear from other people as well.
Well, let's see. Miley, we heard, is all sass all the time.
There's more to it, I promise. So I primarily use SAS, which again is a very outdated data analysis language, but we are transitioning onto Databricks, which I'm actually very excited about because I worked with it at my internship. And we still do dabble in SQL, and Power BI would be the ones that we work with primarily.
Okay, so but eventually you're going to be like a Databricks plus Python shop.
Yes, yeah, hopefully soon.
All right. Um, Justice, what's the kind of the main are you writing in Python right now to kind of take some of these LLMs into production?
Oh boy, I'm writing in a lot of things right now. That's when you step into the software engineering space, you have to learn a lot of languages pretty quickly. So Python, um, TypeScript, what else? Just some of the like React, some of those software engineering
Yeah, so the
frameworks, but it's
JS stuff. Yeah.
yeah, but it's primarily Python.
Okay. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I've actually programmed probably in about 15 or 16 different languages throughout my career. There was a point at which I was learning about two a year. And they all end up being the same after a while. Like the fundamentals are the same, right? It's just a different syntax, a different way of looking at it. And so if you understand the theory, if you understand what can be done, then it's just a matter of figuring out how you do it in that particular language, right?
100% right. It's daunting at first when you come from just like I only code for math basically or machine learning, and then when you kind of have to start into the software engineering field, it's a little daunting at first, but once you realize it's not like it's actually pretty. It might be easier than learning statistics in R. Um, then it's pretty easy.
Yeah. Hans, is it mostly R Studio, a little bit of SQL?
Yep. A lot of R and a lot of applications. I guess the other languages, yeah, SQL and then SPSS. We use a little bit of that for the survey analytical work that we do, and then work with clients who may have some other, the Python being one of them, other interests. And then we do really try to develop a lot of the different R capabilities, a lot of shiny well, at least some work in Shiny, which we enjoyed doing, be able to make interactive visualizations, but primarily, yeah, the Postgres SQL databases interactive with R to do majority of the work that we do.
Thanks. All right, any other audience questions before we wrap things up? That's what we call a pregnant pause in the business.
Jameson, if I could add one more thing while we're on this pregnant
Of
pause.
course, yeah.
When I was thinking back when you asked the question about I think you said classes we enjoyed the most. The class that was the most valuable was the data engineering class, for sure.
Yeah.
I learned so much in that class just about like data strategy. And sorry, my dog has a squeak toy. He thought it was a good time to grab that. I'm sorry if you can hear that. But the data engineering class, it was probably the class I did the worst in, but it was like by far the best information. And I wish I could have taken like 3 classes of that over the 3 semesters that we had. Or I guess it's a trimester at that point. But yeah, that class, take it very seriously.
Well, I've got good news for future students. We have taken both our machine learning curriculum and our data engineering curriculum, and we've added a class. And so we now have ML1 and ML2, and data engineering 1 and data engineering 2, because those are the 2 things that really kind of define this program. And so, yeah, future students are going to get a heavy dose of both.
That's incredible.
That's great. Just give us alumni's the classes for life like the MBA does. I want to come back and take those classes.
All right, Reese, you heard Michelle. Let's work on it.
Is that in my purview, Jameson?
I'm going to bug you every year.
It is now.
Every year.
Awesome.
All right. Well, unless there's anything else coming from the audience, I want to thank our panelists. It's always great to see you all. I hope to see you all again next fall during our big networking event when we invite our friends of the program and alumni back to hang out with us in Portland. But I really do honestly appreciate your time this evening. I know you all have busy schedules and demanding jobs, and so taking the time out of your day to hang out with me is very much appreciated. Thank you.